Hi. So I haven't made a video in a really long time because I was dealing with a whole bunch of personal life stuff, but I was finally able to do something creative, and so I wanted to kind of record a little bit of what I've been working on or trying to work on, which is walkcycles for a Sprite for Super Nintendo style version of Chew and Gum. This walkcycle, I've made a video about this before where I was able to do that. But in this, I'll talk a little bit about how I went from this to that, which is, they're similar, but they're not identical. It was quite a process. In Blender, I used very specifically a perspective style camera, or orthographic, so that there's no perspective. So you can see the perspective is like warped based on the focal length of the camera lens. So it's like, in theory, 120 millimeter camera lens wouldn't warp stuff at all if you went back far enough. But it's better to just use an orthographic because it takes everything out of the equation. And for the actual film, the filter size, I drop the filter size all the way down and make it transparent, and I render it out and basically just render the walk cycle out, and minus those animated camera moves. And what I do is I drag them into aseprite like this. I made the file, I made it render at 128 by 128 pixels. Just look how tiny that is. And what ends up happening is if you turn the filter size down, you don't get any anti-aliasing. You get some, obviously, but you don't get as much anti-aliasing. I mean, there's tons of Blender to pixelart tutorials on YouTube. And they all pretty much say the same thing, which is doing that. But I wanted to turn that into something that looked like, Super Nintendo-ish, or something that I could use for... My thinking was that I wanted walk cycles that I could use for any kind of project I wanted, whether it was point and click or adventure or an RPG. Once I had a series of walk cycles, then I'd be happy. Let's play this. You can see here it is in aseprite as if it's pixel art. Very, if you clean it up, it could be very dead cells. What I do is I start by removing every other frame. And like that. And then so I deleted all of that. And now what we have is a walk cycle that's twice as fast, while in theory probably omitting, we won't know. That's way too fast, but that's because the playback speed was at 3x. Every time I cut the frames in half, I can, that's pretty cool. And then what I did was I deleted another set of keyframes and then checked the viability of the walk cycle to make sure it still read as one. One of the issues I ran into was the fact that it really wasn't a viable walk cycle. It's cute, but it's just unrealistic. And what I ended up doing, of course, once I did that, is take that down, playback speed of 1, play it again, and hey, that's a freaking walk cycle. That's nice, And so my initial plan was to, first what I do is I load the NES palette. I start with an NES palette because there's no real Super Nintendo palette, because if you know a lot about Super Nintendo, you know that there's just an infinite number of colors the Super Nintendo can have, practically. But I like to start with the NES palette and then just add a couple shades here and there as necessary. But I don't do that, though. What I just did there, I forgot, because this is still at, if you look at the sprite size, this is 64 pixels by 64 pixels, which is pretty massive. It's like Donkey Kong Country, Killer Instinct kind of stuff. So before I do any of that, I bring it down another time to 32 by 32. And then you get something that looks it just looks like trash. Look at that crap. So much is open to interpretation, and so much of the arm and leg movement information is completely gone and replaced with just subtle color shading, variations. But, so my original plan, because I didn't really know what I was doing, my original plan was to kind of trace that and then start with the trace and then see what happened. And so I did that, and what ended up happening was something that looked like this. except it was a little worse. This is cleaned up. And it's like, it's not the end of the world. If you compare it to this, you can kind of see how you might interpret that movement into this. But the hands, you can see, I started venturing into the idea of treating it like actual pixel art. And so you can't really follow, Blender renders as actual animation for sprite art. And so I kept tweaking things and adjusting things, and I made his run cycle more dynamic. I animated the ears with a little bit of overlap. I put his, it's kind of like, it's supposed to be a strong walk cycle. Every time I had him walk, it's just adding more arm stuff, simulating the arms going behind him. Nothing at all like the original, but at least I was able to use the original, so I wasn't like totally lost. And then, of course, there was the other walk cycles. Set this here. Let's look at the original one. Was very like weird and dead and droopy and kind of point and clicky. Almost Indicopia-ish in a way. And it's cute. I really liked how the head turns turned out, but it was just very undynamic compared to the walking down. It was almost like he had two different style walks from up and down. And so I added just some arm movements. This is a little hookier, a little bit more up and down, some broader arm sweeps. It's not as it's not as cute and cartoony, but it is cleaner, and it's more walking with a sense of purpose, which makes me happy. And if you take this cycle and this cycle and you play them next to each other, they feel like they belong together. Like they're not too out of place. The arm cycles aren't quite right, but it's, you don't feel like that's two different feelings, two different emotions, even though the ears, the overlap is way more overlappy than on those. And then the walking backwards, I had a real tough time with. This was probably the hardest one, the one I spent the most days kind of trying to figure out. Look at my original, like, back walk cycle. Now, of course, with the character doing it in Blender, I would, let's see here, let's take the sun, rotate the sun, like that. Oh, why would you do that? I want him to be here. Then I want you to focus the camera. Okay, fine, don't focus the camera on him. Focus it near him. I wanted to simulate some top-down. We're kind of cheating the perspective a bit, but you can kind of see that. Now, the sun wasn't supposed to be animated, but you understand what's happening here. So this is the sprite version. Oops, the sprite version of it just ended up being absolutely ridiculous. It's like he's limping. There's just no. It doesn't even register as a walk cycle, which is I just had the hardest time with the legs, with the arms, and that's why I couldn't do like rotoscoping. I had to kind of use that as a foundation and then change stuff and kind of use, and that's what I ended up doing. It's just cute. It's intense. Kind of punch in the air a little bit, but it doesn't bother me. A little bit of up and down overlapping action on the ears. But this is like cleaned up. This took forever to kind of figure out. And again, it's close to the side. This is arguably power walking versus sort of like the strides he's taking in vertical and horizontal, but it's not enough to bother me yet. I haven't put it into a game engine. That's like obviously the next step. But this was the whole. I just wanted something foundational, and this, I've gone through enough passes of this to now where I'm like I can't keep tweaking it. I'd be much happier stopping and doing something different. Doing something. But it's like that's not terrible. The right is obviously going to be used for left. They're slightly different, but I think they'll work out. And then I finally got a walk cycle for Chew, which I did not show anybody footage of me doing it, but that's what it looks like. That's his CG walk cycle. It took me a little while to get it figured out, because his proportions are weird. But that makes me happy. I'm happy with that, So he can walk now in 3D. And then, of course, I wanted to take that 3D and import it into aseprite and give him the same treatment as Gumboy. And I got close. His sidewalk looks cute. It's a little limpy, but I kind of like the limp. I'm not sure, but compared to what this is, let's see here. The original, and then what I ended up using. It's very Super Nintendo-y. His top down needs some work. It's cute, but it's just a little wiggly. Like, I cleaned up his eyes, cleaned up the hat, but his arms are just too flailing. Not enough sense of purpose in the arms. They're too wiggly, especially now that I've redesigned Gumboy. To be more determined, we need like a slightly more... I want his limbs to look less like Krang tentacles and more like true arms. But anyway, I'm just excited about that because, I can drop that in somewhere. And my goal in the future is, instead of making cartoons with the cutscene versions of them with the huge head, like the cartoons I make at the top of episodes, instead of doing that and spending all this time on lip assignment or lip sync and doing all the mouths and everything, I want to make little cartoons that are basically cutscenes of them in different video game worlds, which is why I made a post of Chew in, Lean Square from Chrono Trigger, because I can just grab like a background, I can assign them to an input in a Unity controller, and I can like walk around as them and improvise and make like a little, retro machinima, something something fun. And then of course, obviously, that's just for the intros for like when I'm doing Let's Play stuff. But the ultimate end goal is obviously to make actual games. But now I have the option of, I don't have to be stuck in 3D if I want to do something. I can keep these forever as like a first pass of sprite art. So I can do stuff in Unity or Godot, or I can't really use these in GB Studio or Pico 8 or anything, but I have micro versions of the characters, I believe, somewhere. Anyway, this is like the first creative thing I've done in a long time. So I just wanted to make a little video and show what I've been up to. Because I don't know when I'm going to finish, like, do another pass on these. Like, I might tilt his body, honestly. There's a very good chance, like, as much as I don't love the idea of him, like, speed walking. But I don't... What? No, that wouldn't work, would it? There's only so much you can do. Yeah, no. There may be nothing I can do, honestly. There's a very good chance that I may just have to deal with the fact that this is what I got. Hey, for a first pass, I can always revise it later, after I actually make something. But first, it would be fun to make something. Anyway. Wait! No! Get back here, little one. I'm big. I don't, oh yeah, you're right. You're pretty big. I'm getting bigger. Alright, I'm gonna go. Bye.